Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Tuesday. Happy virtual happy day, or if that's even a day or a thing. So we're really excited to have you join the show this evening. It's going to be an amazing show. Got a great guest to talk about all the things related to beer in the Philadelphia and the New Jersey area. I want to bring Tara Nurin on the screen. Tara, thank you so much for being part of the show. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Greg. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, before we get into everything about what you're doing, the first thing we always do with our virtual happy hour is drink some beer, because that's the most important part of any happy hour, I would have to say. So Tara, what are you drinking on your side you can share with the group here?
I'm drinking my favorite style. It's a Mexican stout. It is made by 8 and Sand Brewery in Woodbury, New Jersey, which is about 20 minutes from where I am. It's Camden County, South Jersey, probably 20 minutes from Philly. So good, and it won a GABF medal in 2017.
Awesome. Well, if you're keeping it local, so am I. I'm drinking a Black Hog IPA. This is a brewery from Oxford, Connecticut, and I live in Connecticut as well. It's a standard IPA that they have, but it's an amazing brewery down there in Oxford with a great spot there. Obviously, it's closed due to COVID, but when they open up, highly recommend it. So if you're out there right now, crack open your beverage, pour it into your glass, drink right from the can. Make sure you check in your beer on Untappd and tag the Untappd at Home venue. It's a great way to show everyone that you are being safe out there, as well as seeing what everyone's drinking around there. So once you poured your beer in your glass, do a little cheers, and thank you so much for watching. Enjoy your beverage. Always good, always great to have a beer on a Tuesday. I just made that up, but that's all we're smelling. So Tara, if people don't know what you're up to, what you're doing, give a brief synopsis of what you do in the beer industry and some of the stuff that you've been working on.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a journalist, a freelancer. I specialize primarily in beer, but also write about food trends, workers' rights, travel, all kinds of stuff that's related to the economy and sort of how we interact with it, especially as it comes to beverages. So within that, I write stories for Forbes. I'm the beer and spirits contributor there. I write articles for other publications. I teach an online intro to beer class for credit for college students. So they actually get 3 credits for studying beer with me.
It's a pretty good deal.
It's a great deal. And, everyone comes in and they think it's going to be just this easy A. And I'm like, this is not going to be an easy A, you guys. I'm serious about this stuff. And I'm working on a book, which is really stressing me out because the manuscript is due soon and I've never written a book before. So I don't think anyone's going to see me through all of August.
Yes, I've had a pleasure writing a book from a tech book a long time ago. I never knew what I was getting into, so I wish for you for the best and when that time comes from there. So obviously, you've been writing this for a little while. How did you get into this kind of space from a beer perspective? And then, for people that are looking to get in that space from a journalism, what advice do you have based on your history of getting into the beer space from a journalism perspective?
Oh, okay. I have lots to say about that. But you want me to be positive. Well, let me start with a quick bit of my background, and then that'll give me enough time to stall and decide what to say about getting into the industry. So I was a TV journalist for 10 years, and my last market was here in Philly. In 2005, I went rogue and started working for myself. My biggest client was the Philly Tourism Bureau. And as I always say, in 2005, I feel, and, for the few years around that, I feel that Philly was the dominant beer city on the East Coast. Yeah, thank you. New Yorkers always argue with me, and I'm like, stop.
No, not even a chance. Not even a chance. So.
I think things have changed now. I wouldn't necessarily say that about Philly anymore, unfortunately. But I was doing a lot of reporting and writing on the emerging craft beer scene in Philly and the surrounding suburbs, and writing about what even that recently we were still calling gastropubs and microbreweries. And I thought, you know what? I've always really liked beer. I like a lot of things that the craft beer industry represents, as far as community and eco-friendliness, et cetera, local economies, culinary tourism, and I decided to specialize in it. So now, for those of you who are thinking about becoming beer journalists. God, part of this question is particularly tricky right now because, to be honest, I haven't thought about it since COVID. And my advice may change. It's hard to make money as any journalist. It's hard to make money as a freelance journalist. I'll get to the good stuff in a minute, I promise, Greg. And the beer media, I mean, I'm sure a lot of your viewers consume beer media, and have noticed that the number of outlets has just dwindled dramatically, along with the rest of the publishing industry. So there are fewer and fewer outlets that will pay to write about beer. Now, the flip side is it's awesome. It's fun. You get to talk about all sorts of aspects of society through beer, sort of like I was saying before. And I guess at this point, I would say that if you want to go into beer journalism, I would maybe expand your niche a little bit beyond beer. That's probably not the advice I would have given a couple years ago. But at this point, if you can write about all alcoholic beverages or beer and spirits and kombucha, cider, mead, maybe don't throw in wine. There are too many wine writers already. So if you diversify, you'll be able to place more stories in more places. And I would say, at the very beginning, if you have to write for free, like on a blog, I would go ahead and do it to get clicks, but then stop. Don't write for free anymore. Just keep your eyes and ears open to what could possibly be a story. Pitch, a blogger, pitch a publisher. If you don't know what a pitch is, look it up. We don't have time to go into it here. Not to be flip, but it's a complicated thing. Just keep pitching, keep getting your clips out, and eventually there you are. You're a beer journalist.
There you go. Yeah, obviously, you touched on it here with COVID being kind of the biggest thing that's been in the news every single day. There's a lot of topics, but specifically, you wrote an article about the myth of the spike in alcohol sales, and I think that's one of the perceptions people have is that I'm at home, I'm not doing anything, alcohol sales must be skyrocketing. Can you give us a little bit of your exposure, how that story and that piece went, people that may not have read it?
Yeah, sure. So I have a lot of pet peeves. And one of them since COVID started is reading all these headlines and then hearing people say to me, alcohol sales are booming. And I get a lot of press releases, with numbers related to alcohol sales. And so I see that's not necessarily the case. Now, my caveat is that what I've learned more recently than the article is that there is a good bit of variability to this. There are some areas of the country, like a distributor in Arizona, the day I wrote the story was like, well, in Arizona, it's not actually, alcohol sales are up overall. Generally, though, like you're saying, everybody thinks that because we're home all day, some of us have the kids and you have to drink your way through the day and night, that alcohol sales must be spiking. But if you think about it logically, that's almost impossible because you have different channels where you can buy alcohol, right? You've got the off-premise, which is a liquor store, basically a grocery store where you're taking beer out in a package most of the time. Then you have on-premise, which of course are your bars and restaurants and concerts and soccer games. All of that got shut down. All of it around the world got shut down. So like I said, it would be almost impossible to make that up just at liquor stores and grocery stores. So what got lost, there's an important nuance that got lost, which is when the media reports, and I think with some of us it was ignorance and some of us it was just misinterpretation actually on the part of the reader. When you're reading a headline that says alcohol sales booming, that's off-premise alcohol sales, but that only tells part of the story.
Big difference.
Yeah, and so Greg, we were just talking as you know, before we went live, and how you look at your numbers every day and the differences you're seeing, and you're watching those numbers real time. So you see where people are drinking. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, from our side too, one of the things that we've always looked at from the Untapped data perspective is where this kind of peaks and valleys had occurred, right? So obviously after in March 15th or 13th, I forget the exact day, when everything started to shut down, we saw a major decline in check-ins that are happening at public venues, which was shocking. Untapped is mainly an app that's used out in public, but at the same time, we saw venues, home venues, or people's home venues, or things they've created from a personal perspective, skyrocketed. So it kind of went a different direction from that side. But as we look into the data now, as reopening as it happened, we're seeing differences in data as well, comparing U.S. to other countries. In other countries, we're seeing more of an incline going up there from public venues. But in the U.S., it's got an incline, then kind of a plateau, and it's kind of going back down there, given the state that we are with COVID overall. But again, we have a lot more US-based customers, users than we do overseas as well. So there could be a law of averages there, but it's interesting just to see the outlook on people's minds. Obviously, yes, people are doing a lot of order delivery, Drizzly and the other ones out there to get beer delivered to them. But we are seeing that increase, obviously, because at-home drinking is something people do anyways, but it's definitely not at a surpassing rate that what it used to be, which is why that story resonated so well with me, is that yes, alcohol sales are booming, but off-prem sales, and not the ones that got shut down from that perspective there. So it's interesting to see that kind of growth from that side there, which makes it very interesting as I look at it every single day to kind of see where we're at and plan for the future. If whatever future that may be, because no one knows what's going to happen really. But you're trying to see what the trends look like from a beer perspective there.
How do you? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
If you joined us late, we're talking to Tara Nurin, who is a freelance beer writer specializing in Philadelphia and New Jersey. If you have a question for Tara, don't be shy. We want to put her on the hot seat, and we want to make her answer some really funny questions. So make sure you ask them on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube, wherever you're watching, and we'll try to put something on the board here for Tara. We got one question here from Dan Uber. I'm going to put him on as well. He says, we kind of talked about this. What inspired you to write about beer and food? And have you ever attended a beer festival? We kind of talked about a little bit before, but any thoughts on that for your Tara?
As to the second question, yes. Many beer festivals. I've worked beer festivals. I've done, I was going to say practically everything you could do at a beer festival, but I will not say that because that is actually not true. Don't want to give anybody any ideas. What inspired me to write about beer and food? Great question. So my family growing up, we were really into food. We traveled internationally a lot, and we're doing culinary tourism decades before that was a term. We always went off the beaten path to look for like all the good eats. And so I always saw it as a very fundamental part of telling the story of who we are as a people and who we are as different peoples. Beer, I started sipping off my dad's cans of Budweiser when I was a toddler, and got into craft beer in college in the 90s in Boston. And so I've always had those interests, and I've always been really interested in writing about economies. And particularly economic growth and tourism, not necessarily intertwined, but if I can write a tourism economy story, all the better. And so it just sort of logically fell together because, like I said at the beginning, in the mid 2000s, beer was becoming an economic driver for Philly and getting people out of the house and bringing people here. And I just saw it as a way to raise Philly's. I thought craft beer would raise Philly's profile and reputation, and I think I was right. So that's I guess the short answer.
Sounds good to me. Well, speaking of Philadelphia, I want to put another question up here from the Chrisbetz, a good friend of mine. He asked, in your opinion, what has surpassed Philadelphia as the best East Coast beer city? Put you on the spot there, Chris.
Yeah,
thanks for writing in.
Out. No, I opened myself up to that. Well, Asheville, definitely surpassed Philly as far as like reputation and I believe breweries per capita. I would think so. Some years ago, and deservedly so. Look, it's an awesome beer city. I don't think I would even still say that New York has surpassed us. Massachusetts obviously has some incredible breweries, but I wouldn't say that Boston has surpassed Philly. Two places I love personally, but I don't know. I mean, I guess you could argue that they've maybe surpassed Philly or not. I love the Tampa St. Pete area for beer.
That's a big one, yeah.
Love it. And then Vermont is the best. I mean, I want to move to Vermont. So I mean, that's like I'm sort of biased, but yeah.
Chris and I actually go way back. We met on Untapped about 8 years ago. We've gone to Philly Beer Week every year for the last 7 years, and unfortunately, this year did not have that there. You know, one of the things I love about Philadelphia, you mentioned earlier that it's one of the put Philadelphia on the map from a craft beer perspective, is the differences of beer that is available there. I mean, Russian River is probably one of my favorite examples I like to give there at Philadelphia, is that it's this amazing brand that you don't really see out on the East Coast, but for some strange reason, it's available in Philadelphia. And specifically, one of my favorite places is Monk's Cafe, located right down there in Philadelphia downtown. So, I mean, they definitely have got a lot of great stuff going for it. But I think that for me, it's always been a good beer city because it has the reach of those beers that you don't normally get on a regular situation. You would have to travel West Coast or Midwest to get those. You know, back in the old days, Bell's Two Hearted and Bell's was only there and not available in New York. New Belgium was the same thing. So I think now that it's spread up the East Coast, it becomes less of kind of like, oh my God, destination sense. But I think Philadelphia is definitely still known for its high quality beer across the board. So thank you, Chris, for writing in that question, man. Hopefully see you soon, man. Hope everything's good with the family.
And thank you, Greg, for saying good things about Philly beer. I mean, you're 1,000% right. I mean, Philly does have some unique beer things going for it. And you did mention Monks. So I tweeted at them and I was like, hey guys, what do you want me to promote? And they said, well, we're getting Elder in soon. And my understanding has always been the reason that we have Russian River in Philly as the only place on the East Coast, or at least that was the case until recently, and may still be, I'm not 100% sure, is because of Monks, because of Tom Peters. And we have like a super strong Belgian beer game because of Tom Peters. And then, you know, we have such a strong German heritage. We have some prominent breweries that started as German style breweries, and they still make those styles, which are now happily popular again, but they never went away.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, one of the things I've always caught me in the eye is that the diversity of the beer selection in Philadelphia. That's kind of what has always drove me down there for Philly Beer Week or other locations. Just the amount of breweries that are in there, the amount of diversity in the beers that are making. They're not all IPAs. They're not all Belgian beers. So that's what's really cool about it. And one thing to note, if you are going down to Philadelphia, not obviously now with COVID, but in the future, you go to Monk's, there's a back room at Monk's that people don't know about. So if you walk all the way down to the back and you go left before the bathrooms, there's a whole other bar back there. So don't forget that when you go down to Monk's. It's secret on the network here, but you always can find a good plan of the other on draft there. So really appreciate all that Monk's does there. Let's go to another question here. This one is from, let's see here. So many questions today. This is great. Oh,
good.
Jeff St. Andre, what's your favorite brewery all time? This is one of those questions like if you have kids, what's your favorite kid? But we're going to put you on the hot seat there. What's your favorite brewery? Maybe not all time, maybe right now. That's probably a better question to ask. Because what about right now? What's your go-to brewery for making the best beers that you like?
That is unfair. The truth is, I don't have one single favorite brewery. I mean, my longtime favorites are Dogfish, Cigar City, Funky Buddha. Told you I was a Florida girl for beer. Obviously, Russian River. I think Fort Collins has an incredibly strong game. I love Odell. I don't think they do anything poorly. And of course, now that I'm on the spot, you know, I want to highlight, I don't know if it would make my favorites list, but I want to highlight this brewery in Philly that's pretty underground, and it almost literally is underground, called Fermentary Form. And it's this teeny little place. They do use the Solera method. It's off like a really sketchy alley, and they don't have regular hours. You have to look on their social media to see when they're open, or you can walk by, and if the green light is on outside, then they're open. And they do some of the best wild fermentations I've had come out of this country. So that's a little hidden gem that if you come to Philly, you should try. So that's my cop-out way of answering that question.
Well, here we go. I just put up the brewery page on the page right now for this particular brewery. And obviously you can see it 4.13 rating on in Philadelphia there. So it's a very, very small location, but they got a lot of good beers to check out there, especially if you're in the area from there. So good ratings on that front. Let's go to another question here. This one is a good one because I'm a big fan of this brewery here. Cameron asks, what are your thoughts on the style of Tired Hands beer? They definitely are a unique brewery right outside of Philadelphia there. What do you have any thoughts on the stuff that they're doing out there?
I think they're fantastic. I don't know if if Cameron was using the word style intentionally, as if maybe, I don't know. I'll just answer what I think of their beers. I think they're great. I think that their wild stuff, like their saisons, their saisons are so delicate and so pretty. And I'm a little sad. My sense is that they've moved more in the IPA direction. When they started, they were both. They did a lot of IPAs and a lot of saisons. And the last time I was there, it was like all IPA on the menu, and I wasn't in the mood. But they were still fabulous. And they've got 2 locations that are cool, good food. So I'm a fan. Yeah.
I definitely recommend. Yeah, definitely recommend checking them out too if you're in the area. Obviously, when this thing goes forward, this is an amazing place. 2 locations, is great beer. I believe I went to one of them one time. I believe it's like a fermenteria or something along those lines. They have a nice eating area there as well, wide open space. But again, once COVID leaves us, we'll be able to enjoy these things more freely. But highly recommend a trip down there if you're visiting Philly from that perspective. You know, we had talked a little bit before the show. We had sent you some questions I want to answer, and we haven't got to them yet. So I figured I'd ask them now. We're talking about Philadelphia here as we talk about being a really good beer town, but obviously there's a lot more to beer in Philadelphia, maybe spirits and other alcohol as well. What's your go-to spirit or cocktail that you kind of had in the Philadelphia or New Jersey area that you kind of want to share with us in terms of a good bar and a good drink that you have? Maybe a little bit not beer-like, but hey, let's ask the question anyway. Let's diversify our options that we're talking about here.
Yeah, I love that question. When people ask what I like to drink, I say I'm an equal opportunity drinker. So I'm big on the cocktails also. One of my very favorite cocktail bars in Philly is also an unbelievable beer bar. It's called Fiume. But if you look it up I'll spell it for you, and you can Google it while we talk. You won't find a website. It's Fiume. And this is the wildest little place. It's up these very narrow stairs above an Ethiopian restaurant. And I don't mean a trendy Ethiopian restaurant. I mean like Ethiopian down-home restaurant. And you walk up these stairs, and they have some of the best draft and bottled beer in the city. And they make some unbelievable cocktails, and the space is tiny. I mean, tiny. It's got like an old, awesome. Oh, look, I got so excited. I started to shriek. Yeah. I mean, there's barely anything in that room that you can't see because there are like 6 chairs and there's no phone. And just the people who run it and the bartenders are absolute geeks. And they're always coming up with cool stuff. And I got a Hardywood Christmas ale there. And that was my first time having it in a bottle. And I don't know, you just didn't really see that around. So that's an awesome place. Distillery called Philadelphia Distilling that puts out some really, really high quality product, excellent food. And when you go, the vibe is so, I have a hard time describing it. It feels very elegant to me in there, but very modern elegant. Like, it's got exposed stuff and nobody's pretentious, and the servers are wearing whatever, I think. I might be making that up. Maybe they wear suspenders. I can't remember. But they've just done an unbelievable job with the vibe, just creating this vibe where everybody's welcome, but there's just this sort of like slightly rarefied feel to it. That would be one of my top recommendations for cocktails too.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, let's shift gears a little bit. Obviously, it's very important to talk about these subjects, especially in the age we live in now with women in beer. And I want to talk a little bit about your work with the Pink Boots Society and where that's kind of where that started and how it's going so far. Ultimately, it's very important to have different voices and different perspectives when it comes to a very heavily male influenced industry. What are your thoughts on some of the work that they've been doing and you've been doing with the Pink Boots Society?
I think the world of the Pink Boots Society. They started in 2007, so that makes them 13 years old, and obviously a lot has changed with craft beer in that decade. But one of the things that has very noticeably changed, not really since 2007, but when I interview females in the industry, a lot of them say they saw a pivot around 2013, where a lot more women started joining the industry. And I see that being the time when, back in the day, if you met a woman who worked at a brewery, at a craft brewery, chances were very high she worked in one of three positions. She was either in sales, in HR, or in the lab. Those are fabulous positions, and a lot of women were running labs. Like Whitney Thompson, when I met her, was running the lab at Victory. But you rarely saw women in production, and things really started to change around then. And obviously an organization that's 13 years old goes through a lot of different shifts and changes, but I feel like it was really hitting its stride right around then. So I do give Pink Boots a lot of credit for encouraging women to get into the industry and creating a very supportive environment for women already in the industry, which I think might have trickled out a bit and made it feel like a safer space for women who weren't already there to come in. A big thrust of their work the past couple of years since they became a nonprofit is to give scholarships to members, and women have gone all over the world and just done unbelievable things because of the scholarships they've gotten. So I was the historian. I'm now the archivist. I don't really know what the difference is. Maybe somebody on the board does. But there are chapters all over the world. And I can't even tell you, like, now when I travel somewhere, I'll have a friend or an acquaintance or a Facebook friend at least from Pink Boots, and I can go and meet up with that person. Sometimes I stay with them. It's been fantastic for professional and social networking. So I know not everybody's a huge fan. Some women I understandably say, I don't want to be known as a female brewer. I'm not a female brewer. I'm just a brewer.
I'm a brewer. Yep.
And totally fine. I get it. My feeling is I wish we were at the point where we didn't have to have a special group to support women. Maybe one day we'll get there, but I don't think we're there yet.
Very good. There's a question here as well on this topic here from Robin Duff, and he asks, do you have any examples? She asked some examples of women-owned breweries on the East Coast. Any ones that come to your mind that you're thinking of at this point?
Yeah, I mean, a lot. Just even in New Jersey, I can think of a bunch. One that I really want to highlight is Backward Flag at the Shore. My friend Tori Fisher owns it, and she is, can I say badass on this show, Greg?
You can say badass on the show. It's all good.
She is a 2-time combat vet in Iraq and Afghanistan, and she owns this brewery now. And she's a certified Cicerone. I think she was the first one in New Jersey, actually. Now there are 4 levels. It doesn't sound like that big a deal anymore, but it was at the time. And she is a pillar of the community. She has first responders, military people in there. that's a place for them to come and like support one another. But she's also gay. And so she has brought in like a transgender vet to speak to these old, crusty, OG military guys. And like, there's just silence. And then she told me the story, like one of them, like the oldest guy in the room, got up and shook the woman's hand after. I think I'm getting off topic, Robin. I'm sorry. And that's what happens when I talk about Tori. Right near me is Forgotten Boardwalk. Jamie Quelly owns that. Up north in New Jersey is Angry Eric. That is co-owned by a woman who runs the entire place. Her husband is like owner in name only. I could go on and on. Yeah,
it's great just to see that kind of camaraderie and building. But I agree with you. You know, we shouldn't have to talk about this as a woman-owned brewery. It should just be a regular brewery, but it's important to kind of highlight these things as achievements because it's tough to kind of break that glass ceiling in this industry sometimes with the amount of people look like me. So, I think that's a very important thing to highlight and, definitely opportunities to kind of celebrate those and enjoy them well. But there's definitely a lot and more that are growing every single day, it appears, across the board. So I appreciate the question there on that. Ultimately, one other thing I want to kind of bring up with you as well. We talked about COVID. Every time we talk about COVID everywhere we go these days. But what have you been seeing from a local perspective of breweries and bars in your area from a COVID side? Is it more of a delivery system? Because I know in Connecticut now, the governor has allowed breweries directly to deliver to individuals from breweries. What are breweries trying to do to keep the lights on, from a lack of a better word, from a COVID perspective?
I want to talk about New Jersey when I answer this question. Philly and PA, they have their own thing going and they sort of mirror a lot of what's going on around the country. New Jersey is usually a special circumstance when it comes to, this, when it comes to brewery regulations in particular. And so just real quick, for those of you guys who don't follow alcohol policy in all 50 states, their liquor licenses are incredibly expensive in New Jersey. They can top $1 million. And so there's a lot of pushback from the restaurant and bar industry on breweries for running tap rooms. And so there have been various phases of restrictions placed on breweries as to what they can and can't do. And one of the things that came along not too long ago was that they could barely have any events. And how events are so important to breweries. So that's the background. The governor has been really open-minded about letting breweries do what they need to do during COVID. Less so with distilleries, but breweries are able to do takeout and delivery, which is pretty surprising. And there's a bill that has passed the assembly that allows breweries, bars, and restaurants, and distilleries and other alcohol producers to continue doing what they're allowed to do during COVID for a certain period of time after. Depending on what it is, it's 6 months to a year. And we're talking about bars and restaurants being able to sell drinks to go for 6 months after COVID is, quote unquote, over, or whatever they determine to be the starting point for that. They have made it also in the bill, and then the governor has just recently made it much easier for breweries to set up outdoor seating, even if it's not on their own property, which is huge. And that's in the bill to extend that longer. So brewery laws are like so often a moving target in New Jersey, but I know the beer community here is really, really hopeful that with these sort of expanded abilities that the breweries have had, and then with this bill that will hopefully pass, they'll be able to continue doing it. And then I guess they're probably like the guilds. We have 2 brewers guilds in New Jersey. Don't ask. Will push to kind of quietly keep those things going permanently. That's the hope.
That's the biggest thing, is a lot of questions around what people what people really want in terms of the laws to change after COVID. So I'm glad that, things are still kind of moving at that pace, and maybe those things would stay from that perspective too. But well, thank you so much, Tara. I really appreciate all your insights today. Talking a little bit about Philly beer, talking about monks and all the great things in New Jersey as well, and all the great questions. Want to give you an opportunity to have any final plugs where people can find you on the internet and anything you're working on from that perspective.
Thanks. Okay, so my website is under construction, but it exists. It's my name, taranurin.com. And soon that will be a place where you can sort of branch out and see the other things. Forbes. If you Google my name and Forbes, you will see the stories I have written, all of them for the past 4 years or so. And the book I'm working on is the first history of women in beer in book form. I have an amazing publisher. The book is scheduled to drop next fall, 2021. The working title, which will probably change. I love it. I'm getting some horrible feedback on it lately from friends. I'm like, don't you get it? It's irony. They're like, no, we don't get it. The working title is Don't Worry, Darling, You Didn't Burn the Beer.
Got it. I like it.
It's ironic. Thank you.
Yeah. Very cool. Thank you, Tara. Thank you so much for joining us, and appreciate your insights. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for watching our Tuesday virtual happy hour. Hope you had a lot of fun. Hope you had a great beer and join us in the chat. Hope to see you on Thursday. We got another great guest coming up on here, and it's John Holzer Jr., who is the co-host of Four Brewers podcast, located in California. They talk about beer, and they're a longtime friend of mine and a longtime Untapped user. So we'll talk all things California beer and a little bit about his podcast as well. And then next Tuesday, one of my special guests that I'm excited to talk about here, Dennis Crowley, the founder of Foursquare. A lot of what Untapped is built off of what Foursquare is going to come on, talking about beer, technology, and what he's working on in his next stages with some of the stuff in upstate New York. So hope you'll tune us back in on Tuesday next week and Thursday and all the time. But go to untapped.tv to see all the information on what our new shows are going to be up there. We just redesigned the entire website, so check it out. Untapped.tv. You can find all the stories and the videos and all the amazing stuff, and subscribe for updates. And if you want to listen to the audio version of the podcast too, make sure you check out where any podcasts are located. We upload all the audio only, so in case you don't want to look at my face every single time, which no offense is okay, we'll be up there as well. Thank you so much for watching tonight. We'll see you on Thursday. Cheers, everybody. Thanks for watching.